Hello, everybody. Welcome to All Villa, No Filler. Please remember to like and subscribe. Subscribe if you love the mighty Aston Villa. And please, 5-star reviews if you like what we do. Help the podcast keep on growing. Spotify, Apple, YouTube, wherever you get your podcasts. Look, let's go to the tactical pads. We've got Everton this weekend. Everton have started the season abysmally, absolutely abysmally. They lost 3-0 at home on the first day against Brighton. They then went and lost 4-0 at Tottenham. And then they were 2-0 up against Bournemouth, cruising at home. And in the last 10 minutes, barely even that, to be honest, in the 87th minute, they conceded one to go 2-1 and lost 3-2. Atrocious start to the season, but it's similar to what they did last season as well. They lost the first three games, including a 4-0 loss to Aston Villa. And I must say, I think that the 4-0 loss to Aston Villa, the game I went to last year, I think it's one of the worst performances I've ever seen from a stadium team at Villa Park. They were absolutely awful. And I wondered, are this team going to be capable of staying up? But they showed what they can do. You do know with Dyche teams that they defensively they sort themselves out. They sorted themselves out last year and actually became a very solid Premier League team. When we went away there last season and drew 0-0, it could have gone either way that game, really. Everton could have won that game. Emi Martinez had to pull off two absolute world-class saves to stop, I think it was McNeil, and the one-on-one that Dominic Calvert-Lewin had. Eventually, I think they'll sort themselves out. They did well to start with their points deductions last season. And this season, as bad as they have been, I still think they'll do what they always do. They'll figure it out defensively, and concede fewer goals as the season progresses. Now, despite the fact they start, so early on in the season they got battered 4-0 at Villa. Last season, Everton ended up being the team that conceded that they had the fourth best defense in the Premier League last year. Conceded 51 goals. Aston Villa conceded 61. We were the ninth best. And so, yeah, they were fourth. Only Liverpool, Man City, and Arsenal had better defenses than Everton. And when it comes to conceding goals from open play, only Arsenal and Manchester City conceded fewer. So what Everton have shown, at least last season when they got their act together, is that when they take a lead, very, very hard to break them down and come back and get points against them. What you do need to hope for against Everton is that you take an early lead, basically. Now, I mean, as a kind of turnaround with this season, as good as Everton were last season defensively, conceding, with the fourth best defense in the league, this season they've started out by conceding 10 in 3. So that is a shocking number of goals given, where they were defensively last season. There's a lot of different factors to that. I think maybe they just start the season slow, maybe. Started slow last season with 3 losses. They've had 3 losses this season. And maybe the noises with Dyche haven't been great. There are a lot of problems, off the pitch, as we know. We don't really know what's going on with the takeover off the pitch. Buying players in the summer, they didn't really strengthen too well, I would say. However, that said, we look at the team they've got here. Now, I've only just put out this because, traditionally Dyche likes to play 4-4-1-1. Now, I've only put out the team they put out against Bournemouth. So Dwight McNeil playing off of Calvert-Lewin, Iliman Ndiaye, a player going out on the left. Ndiaye, who they signed during the summer from, I think it was Marseille. And then Timo Robenham starting in the centre there alongside Idrissa Gueye. Now, there's various possibilities this team could change. They could, bring Abdoulaye Doucouré in, put him in there, maybe put Dwight McNeil out wide, and then use a Jack Harrison or Iliman Ndiaye as a sort of players who come in a bit later in the day, cause Villa a few problems, from about the 65th minute onwards. Also, Jared Branthwaite, he was injured previously. Whether he could come in and maybe start ahead of a Michael Keane, that's a possibility. But for the time being, look, I'm just going to go with what they started with last time. My prediction would be that they do start a different lineup, or at least bring in a couple different players. Given the fact that they had such a bad day out against Bournemouth, you sort of feel like he's going to want to change something up in that way. Um, Looking at Villa, obviously Leon Bailey's injured. So I've just sort of gone with, again, the same team we had last time. Though I think if I were to guess and say, is there a position that we maybe look to change up? I think most likely probably is right back. Lamar Bogard. Could he go with Nedeljkovic? I think that's an area where Unai himself isn't quite sure without Matty Cash there at the moment. It's certainly an area that we're going to have to work on. Could he go with Edri Konsa outright and bring in Diego Carlos? Because the fact is, Villa play this weekend against Everton, and then we have our first Champions League game just a few days later against Young Boys, and then of course we play again in the Premier League. So he's going to want to balance up the minutes, you would think. Do I think he'll go with Bogart as right back again? I mean, look, he might think, you had your first start. Uh, why not show what you can do again? And you had one experience coming in against Everton, where at home will be the slightly more ascendant team. You're probably not going to have players all over you in the way that Leicester were. Leicester were quite helter-skelter, I thought. So maybe it's another chance for Bogart to play in a game where Villa might have a little bit more possession than we did against Leicester. But I just wonder whether it's time for Nedeljkovic to have a start, and I think he did well against Arsenal, against Martinelli in particular. I think Trossard was a different lesson for him. And then when he came on against Leicester, I think he did a really good job in shutting down Mavididi. And, Winston, Lamar Bogard had shown signs of tiredness. So when Mavididi came on, he just looked knackered, and Mavididi did him, didn't he? We all remember that for the Leicester goal, did him down the left and put the ball in. But Nedeljkovic came on to him, and fair play to him. He shut down Mavididi and showed the kind of pace and strength that I think, if you watch the compilation videos of him, if you watch his highlights of Red Star, if you watch what he did against Arsenal, and what he's done for Serbia as well, that's kind of his strength, isn't it? It's his MO, and bombing forward. If that's what Unai Emery wants to do, Nedeljkovic bombing forward to support, let's say McGinn starts out right, I'm guessing, then that could be a real area of trouble for Everton. I think this could be a day, if Nedeljkovic is let loose a little bit, this could be a day where we really get to see what he can do, just pressing forward and getting into the box. But that said, look, Unai Emery as well, he might spring a surprise. He might look to balance minutes up a little bit. He might go Bogard. He might put Konsa out right, bring Diego Carlos in. He's not played yet this season. And, will he bring Philogene in and then maybe start McGinn where Ramsey is? Philogene is a more direct replacement for Leon Bailey. That's a possibility, but I think it's getting harder and harder to argue that Ramsey shouldn't be starting. He's been involved with so many goals already this season. If you look back at the Leicester game, obviously he got, it ended up being Watkins' assist, but really, it was Jacob Ramsey's assist, wasn't it? With the free kick in the first half when he put that ball directly across the area, and Amadou Onana was there to score. And then again, Jacob Ramsey was heavily involved with the second goal with Luca Dean pressing forward. That link-up play had with Luca Dean. Ramsey getting in behind for a cross across the area. It didn't go anywhere, but it worked its way back to Jacob Ramsey and Luca Dean again. This time it was Dean who got to the final third, whipped that ball in, and John Duran with a fantastic header. Now, again, there might be question marks. Does John Duran, has he earned his chance to start? And, I wouldn't be totally shocked if he did start. It's hard to argue with him, the way he's played. But Ollie Watkins is that striker, isn't he? That he's just the man. And I just think the way it works with Watkins is that he tends to start seasons a little bit slowly, but eventually gets his goal. And when he gets his goal, that's when he starts to come alive, isn't it? And I think against Everton, it's a team that he normally causes problems for Everton. He's had field days against Tarkowski and Michael Keane in the past, and you just think that Unai Emery will persist with Ollie Watkins, and just wanting to get that goal, get that assist, and once it comes, there you go, ready and starting. And I think against Leicester, he did show signs that he's getting there. He had he got in, he pressed really well, but he also pressed for the free kick that led to the first goal. He pressed the Leicester keeper. to win that, to almost win the ball back, but at least put them under pressure. And he pressed again on other occasions where he almost got him behind when Yuri Tielemans put the ball into him. It was a good stop from the Leicester keeper, and then also Morgan Rogers again coming through pressing. Morgan Rogers wins that ball. He finds a through ball to Ollie Watkins, and a good save from the Leicester keeper. So, look, Watkins' goal will come, and it's just about persisting with him. But at some point, you do have to think there's going to be a choice there for Unai Emery about when to start John Duran. Does he start him at young boys? We'll see. We'll see. He's certainly going to mix it up. With the volume of games we've got coming in. You've got to bear in mind, a lot of our players have been on international duty and played as well. But you would think that Jacob Ramsey and Ollie Watkins, neither one of them were on international duty. So the two of them, you would think, would be fresh and coming into this game ready to start. That's just the way I see it. But as I say, look, don't come calling me out if this team isn't what it looks like. Professor Uno might well switch it up, and I think he will be switching things up in the next week or so. But if I had to guess, this is how it would look with Jacob Ramsey on the left, John McGinn on the right, like we saw against Leicester, and Ollie Watkins starting up front with Morgan Rogers. My God, showing once again for the England under-21s what a player he is. 2 goals, heavily involved with another goal as well. He's brilliant, isn't he? I mean, he's just waiting for that moment. Now, if we just look at what Everton might do. Now, I'll pull their players back, and you'd think they'll try and make it quite tight. Dwight McNeil, if he starts as the middle sort of second striker, I guess, and or if it's Abdullah Doucouré, they'll sit back and just make it tight and difficult for Villa to find space. And I think that without having Leon Bailey, finding that space is going to be quite tricky. And again, that's maybe where an area where having Jaden Philogene as a starter or Jaden Philogene as a player who comes onto the pitch, I think that could be a game where he really shows what he can do in tight areas and picking passes, being able to turn in a tight space and beat a man and get to the byline and, work some magic up here with an Ollie Watkins once he gets to the byline or Morgan Rogers coming in. I think this is a game where Jaden Philogene might fancy his chances here and think, Villa are really struggling to break Everton down, which is a possibility. I think particularly, last season, Leon Bailey was an absolute nightmare for Everton. And so was Moussa Diaby. Obviously, Diaby's not here anymore, but Leon Bailey looks like he's going to be injured this weekend. So I think this is a chance for Philogene, whether he starts or if he comes off the bench. I think he's a player definitely to watch. And if you think about it, in pre-season, Philogene and Nedeljkovic had a couple of really nice moments linking up together against Athletic Club when we played them at the Bescot, or the Poundland Stadium as it's known. They had a really nice understanding of one another, and I think this could be a day. Let's see how it goes. If they do get on the pitch and they play on the same side together, it's an area I'm quite excited to see what they might do to Mikalenko or Iliman Ndiaye on the day. But I just don't think McGinn is not going to start. He's the captain, isn't he? And Jacob Ramsey coming in fit and firing fresh. 2 assists already this season. I would argue, I still probably give him that assist against Leicester. The assist he got against West Ham. He's been heavily involved with all our goals so far this season. He's been, or a number of our goals at least this season. He's been really, really good, and he looks like he's back to his best already. And he's got to start sooner or later. And I fancy this could be an area that does it. Now the thing is, if Everton do choose to go quite tight at the back here, in this sort of area where Tarkowski and Irobina might be, can Jacob Ramsey find that half turn, find that area in which to, be at his best sort of lung busting best, I guess. That's probably not the sort of game where that might happen, you would think. But for the fact, if say Everton get a breakaway or Villa get or if Everton get a set piece, maybe Villa then do find that space. But something you've seen with Ramsey as well, like I say, Leicester, with the second goal that John Duran scored, Jacob Ramsey showed that he's much more than just a transitional player. Jacob Ramsey showed that he's much more than just a player who turns and rushes into space. He's a player who's got really intelligent link up. He's potentially elite level player. I think he's a fantastic midfielder, Jacob Ramsey. I really do. The link up play he had with Luca Dean down the left um, against Leicester was really good, really good. And you saw the same thing again against uh, West Ham as well when he linked up with Ian Maatsen. Now, obviously, I mentioned Ian Maatsen there. In the last game against Leicester, I wondered if Maatsen was a player who might come in and start. Bought him for a lot of money. He did really well again when he came against Arsenal. Showed what he can do pushing forward, and he also did really well against West Ham when he came on. Now, I do wonder in this game whether if Everton sit a bit deeper, whether Maatsen's sort of dynamism, whether that might be what we need. But I just think, Luca Dini's worked his way back into the French national team. He played for France this week. You know, I've got it on the old grapevine that Unai Emery is massively impressed with how Luca Dean played last season. You cannot do anything but praise Dean, really. His attitude with Aston Villa has been absolutely brilliant. He's involved. He does the another one after the game. He seems to really love the club itself. He at least projects that. I know a lot of people might argue, well, that's just performative or whatever. But at the same time, he doesn't have to do it. A lot of players don't do it, and he's shown that he really does care about playing for Villa. We were linked heavily with Marcos Acuna from Sevilla last season. We brought in Ian Maatsen. Alex Moreno we bought. Luca Dean's had a lot of challenges since Unai Emery came in, and he's really solidified himself as such a solid fullback, and he's a really great option for us now. Really, he's just a safe pair of hands, is how I'd put it. And that assist he got against Leicester, that doesn't hurt either. He's shown what he can do going forward as well. But I do think that Ian Maatsen is a more dynamic fullback. He's a bit more in the Alex Moreno mold, and I think that eventually Maatsen's going to work his way into a starting role. And again, like I say, I wouldn't be surprised at all if he does start against Everton, and he's seen as that more dynamic player. And Luca Dean, he played international. He played for France this week against Belgium. Maybe he gets a rest, and maybe Professor Unai thinks I'm going to work with the players who've been with me for 2 weeks, like Watkins, Ramsey, Maatsen, and just give a rest to a Luca Dean, and then get him ready, fit and firing for young boys in the week and the Premier League game we have on the weekend after. But like I say, I'm just going to stick with the team that finished against Leicester. Now, Villa's build-up is very interesting this season. Um, uh, I went to the West Ham game away, and something I really noticed was that Onana and Tielemans seemed to stick together. They weren't really progressing forward that much, and I think that in the previous season, when you had Douglas Luiz there alongside Boubacar Kamara or John McGinn, Douglas Luiz would sit slightly further forward and progress a little bit further forward, whereas it feels like Tielemans and Onana are sort of sticking in line together and inviting the pressure from the opposition team. And what happens is that team comes forward, and as they do, Tielemans is such a great passer of the ball that um, he's finding uh, Morgan Rogers or Jacob Ramsey in space, completely cutting out the midfield basically. And Rogers then turns, or Jacob Ramsey then turns, and they run at the opposition, or they link up with Watkins or whatever. Obviously, of course, Pau Torres can do that as well with his through balls. But it's just interesting that the fullbacks, they seem to be sitting a little bit deeper than last season. We're not quite getting the sort of bombing on and going into a back three that we saw with such regularity. At least that's what the eye test is telling me, what I've seen on TV and what I've seen, when I went to the West Ham game. Bar when, Luca Dean did go forward against Leicester for that assist when Ian Maatsen went forward. So they are going forward, as I say, and Villa are going back into that three. But it just feels like we're slightly tighter together, those two midfield and those back four. And I do wonder if that's a response to the fact that Aston Villa, quite frankly, conceded too many goals last season. And we do need to sharpen up. But, let's particularly, it was set pieces that caused us problems last season. and so far this season, so good. We haven't yet conceded from a set piece. And like I say, when I went to the West Ham game and I saw Amadou and Arna standing in the area for our defensive set pieces as well as our attacking ones, of course, I thought, wow, okay, that is a big old guy you got there, and it really helps. But it will be interesting to see, Villa. We played against Arsenal. We sort of invited the pressure because they press high, and then we've had two away games where the opposition is expected to be the slightly more ascendant team. This week, this is the first game at home really this season where Villa, I think, are out and out expected to be the team that takes it to the opposition. So it will be interesting to see if Everton just sit in, we play a little bit differently, and Tielemans therefore goes a little bit further forward, and maybe a fullback we tend to go forward a little bit more than we have done in the previous games with our fullbacks. Does Nedeljkovic bomb on? That'd be an interesting thing to watch. I think I'm very interested to see how Villa play it this weekend, just to see if our build-up play that we've observed so far this season changes just because we're playing a team that's going to be a little bit more defensive against us. Now, one thing to watch out for, I think, will be this area. Ndiaye, if it's Ndiaye, maybe it's Dwight McNeil comes out to the left, as he did against Spurs. But this is an area I think Everton will hope to find a bit of luck. As we know, our right back area is a little bit. There's a few question marks over it at the moment. We're relying on two young guys in Lamar Bogard at the age of 20 and Kosta Nedeljkovic at just 18. Now let's give a shout out to Nedeljkovic as well. I praised him earlier. I've been raving about him for a while. I think he's got a lot of raw ingredients to be a really, really top player in football. But let's give him a shout out as well. He played for Serbia. Two games for them, one against Spain. He did really well against Nico Williams. All the stats there. If you look at AVSC Stato, go look at what he talked about with Nedeljkovic. It was really positive signs from him for Serbia, and the fact that he's now starting fullback, that's fantastic experience for him, and I'm sure huge confidence for him as well. But it is worth just mentioning with Ndiaye, amazingly, Adam Tynan, who from the AVFC London Lions, has come on the show and tips players that he thinks Villa should look at. He actually tipped them and Ndiaye the season a year ago, just before he went to Marseille, and amazingly, Adam actually played him on a park pitch in London when he was between clubs looking for him. And the way he's described him is that he was a fantastic player. So there's quite a cool story. A guy who's now going to be playing at Villa Park. One of the London Lions got to play against him. But anyway, it's worth looking at here is FBref stats. Compared to other attacking midfielders and wingers. Now, the thing that sticks out to me here is successful take-ons. He's better than 80% of other attacking midfielders and wingers. Now, it's not absolutely incredible, but it's good. It's very good. And you do have to think that Ndiaye and Nedeljkovic area, or whoever it is, whether it's Konsa, Lamar Bogard, that is an area that you think that when the opposition presses Villa, they're going to want to target that area. When the opposition has a tricky winger, that's where they're going to want to hit Villa. And, if there is a moment where Ndiaye gets behind, whips a ball in, that's somewhere really to bear in mind that Everton could potentially cause us problems. Now, I mentioned set pieces earlier. Villa haven't yet conceded a set piece this season. Long may that continue, because last year we looked a bit chaotic. I think Onana's addition obviously has helped, but Everton were the second highest scoring team when it came to set pieces last season. 18 of them. Only Arsenal were better with 20. Man City were third with 16. Aston Villa, we were in seventh with 14, which is still decent, still good. The Wizard Austin McPhee, sure, won even more than that this year. But yeah, so we talk about the Bournemouth game. Two things I observed from that game. If you look at the FBref stats, Irobenham and Idrissa Gana Gay, two former villains, dispossessed 3 times each in the centre. That's not very good. Now, I watched the extended highlights of that game, and something I noticed, and something I think might have been the root cause of what happened, not just the pressure on them at Goodison. Obviously, there's a lot of negativity around it at the moment. I feel sorry for Everton fans having to put up with the way it's been for the last few years. It reminds me of Villa not too long ago. But I think the reason Robinham in particular was dispossessed at least 3 times is because I think they got knackered. I just think they got absolutely knackered against Bournemouth. And I think Dyche might have made the wrong call. Now, on his substitutions in that game, I saw a lot of Everton fans complaining he took Ndiaye off. Robinham looked out on his feet. It looked a bit like, Lamar Bogard in sort of the 70th minute against Leicester. Just he gave the ball away and giving the ball away high up the pitch, but it ended up on Bournemouth breaking away and getting a goal. And up to that point, Robinham had actually played really well and was directly involved in Everton's second goal. Robinham started the season really well for them, which is great to see. I'm glad to see a former villain doing well. And a lot of Everton players or fans have raved about him so far. But I just think, this is me sort of how much a detective theorising here. Looking back on how Everton started the season slow last year, our Dyche team's just slow to get going, and fitness wise, are they just not? Does it take them a little while to get up to speed? I just think looking at the extended highlights of what I saw, particularly with the Robinham gate, they just look knackered. They look knackered, and I genuinely think mentally and physically, because of that exhaustion, that's why they fell apart against Bournemouth at home. And obviously they were vulnerable to that anyway, given the fact that they're not, in the best of shape, as a club at the moment, really confidence wise. But that said, talking about set pieces, if you look at it against Bournemouth, they Dwight McNeil floating it to the back post. That is a constant source of threat for them. If Everton get corners, Dwight McNeil on it, send it to the back post with a tall, Calvert-Lewin or Tarkowski or whoever it is waiting there. It causes teams problems. It doesn't matter how good you are at football. Tall players winning headers is a big thing. And, aerial duels, Dominic Calvert-Lewin wins a bloody lot of them, as does James Tarkowski, as they did against Bournemouth as well. I think Calvert-Lewin won 8 aerial duels in that game. So yeah, it's top side when it comes to that. And anyway, floated the ball into the back post. Calvert-Lewin headed it down. It worked its way to Iliman Ndiaye, took a shot, and it's a good save from Kepa in goal for Bournemouth. But they got away with that. Had another chance when they were 2-0 up to make it 3-0. Dwight McNeil, corner to the back post. And who is it this time? It's not Calvert-Lewin. It's James Tarkowski. And he heads it against the post. Bournemouth got away with that as well. So it could easily have been another day. That's 3-0. And Everton go home and it's all great, hunky-dory, and they're ready for Villa. But obviously that, as I say, 18 set-piece goals last season. And no reason whatsoever why they can't cause Villa a few problems in that sense as well. Villa are a team that's vulnerable to set pieces. Anyway, I look at Villa's team. I look at how Everton has started the season. Aston Villa have to go into this game thinking we are very high in confidence and we're going to cause Everton a lot of problems. And I think I do think we're missing Leon Bailey. I think if he's not fit for this game, it's a real miss actually. Because if they're just going to that low block, I think we might be quite reliant on players like Yuri Tielemans working passes through the lines and Watkins, working his way in working space. We might be reliant as well on Morgan Rogers just back to goal, clever flicks here and there, pressing the Everton team as well when they have the ball. Rogers maybe taking a shot from distance. And I think Jaden Philogene as well. I think it's a real chance for him to come on and show what he can do. But also John Duran. John Duran's going to get on that pitch. And physically, I remember watching him last season against Everton when he got his first goal for Villa. And I was amazed at physically how good he was at holding the ball up, and just Tarkowski couldn't really deal with him. And we've seen so far this season that Watkins, when he's come up against physical defenders like he did against West Ham and against Arsenal, he kind of went out of the game. I think it's partly because he's just not fitting up to speed, but he can be taken out of the game by physical defenders. And if Everton, do a job on him in that sense, I think John Duran having that option is a really, really nice thing. I'm really confident with what Villa can do to Everton this week end. As I say, I'm very intrigued to see what Aston Villa do when it comes to going up against a team who's going to be more defensive against us at home. See how our build-up chat has changed maybe from last season, because there are one or two signs that our build-up has changed, and we're going a little bit, tighter at the back maybe than we were last season. But we've so far played 2 games away, and we played Arsenal at home, where we're playing a high press against a team that is going to be more high press and probably a bit more in possession than us. So this is a different test for Villa now. Let's see what we can do. I'm really confident what Villa can do. I'm very, very hopeful. Up the mighty Villa.